Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and there's increased talk of war, even in the face of all these peace meetings that we've been seeing as of recently, as France is ordering hospitals to prepare for war. Now, we know that they are calling for conscription in the UK, France, Germany, and other places, of course, integrated into the National Defense Authorization Act in the United States as well. We know that indeed there are these major peace talks happening, which makes people feel a little bit better. But at the end of the day, the script remains the same, as I reported in a video just days ago called Russia and China's New World Order, which I hope people go and check out because I find it very important digging into the macro scale of why exactly all this stuff is happening now. But I'm not going to go into all that again today. I want to talk about some of the recent stories regarding France, Germany, UK, and Russia and Ukraine, as well as the United States, as well as Lithuania and other countries, not to mention Israel, Palestine, and a bit more. So we're going to delve into this as we hear more and more talks by Emmanuel Macron on pushing forward with a full-scale war between the United Nations, NATO, and Russia. Absolute insanity, my friends. Before we get into it, I urge people to check those links below. Check out heavensharvest.com. Very important in the face of all this, because remember, the end goal is a totally dependent humanity who is dependent on grocery stores and then therefore will be on food rations later. I urge people to take that seriously. Go to heavensharvest.com for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you will get again, 5% off as well as free shipping on these orders in the United States. Incredibly important, my friends, going forward. That's heavensharvest.com, code WHAM. I also want to remind people, if you saw my video last week, as they're closing whambeef.com down, you could still get freeze-dried chicken for 50% off when you use code WHAM50. You can also get 50% off with WHAM50 on whatever items may remain on the website. So that's whambeef.com. Go and check that out in the description of this video. Anyway, let's get into this. It's all about being prepared, my friends. I just want people to be to have the solutions at their fingertips. Mario Nawfal wrote on X, France orders hospitals to prepare for war. French hospitals have been told to prepare for a major engagement in Europe by March 2026 as fears of full-scale war with Russia surge across NATO. Leaked documents reveal France is bracing for mass casualties, not just from its own forces, but wounded soldiers from across Europe. Germany's military chief says NATO will be on alert as Russia gears up for Zapad 2025, a massive joint drill with Belarus that many see as a thinly veiled dress rehearsal for a real invasion. Meanwhile, NATO chief Mark Rutte warns the world is on the brink of World War III, claiming a dual assault from China on Taiwan and Russia on NATO territory could trigger a global war, says the Daily Mail. And this comes as Lithuania digs against Russia on its border with Russia and Belarus. Lithuania is laying down dragon's teeth, those old school concrete anti-tank pyramids straight out of World War II. It's part of NATO's push to harden the eastern flank against the Kremlin's next move. You could see these tank stoppers here. Now, again, this is part of the normalization. And no matter how many peace deals we have, how many peace talks we have, how many ceasefires we see, the results will remain the same. I don't want to be, the negative guy here, but this has been scripted for a long time. It's all a manufactured crisis as pretext to shift from the West to the East into the New World Order, which will be technocratic. It says, and I quote here, we have 26 countries that have formally committed themselves to deploy a reassurance force in Ukraine the day after the ceasefire, says Emmanuel Macron. And the boiler repairman promised he'd swing by last Tuesday, and yet here we are, says Margarita Simonian on X. Look, I think that it's pretty clear that they're creating the two sides, fabricating, manufacturing, if you will. And Macron is doing his part as one of those agents of the New World Order and the Rothschilds. As we know, he worked for Nathan Rothschild and Sons. He is basically saying, if there's a ceasefire, we will make sure that ceasefire ends and that there is unrivaled bloody war between these countries. An absolute sick joke against humanity itself, but nonetheless a scripted one that we've known about for some time. As talks of boots on the ground in Ukraine spark unease in Germany, says Reuters, as we see Germany split over idea of sending peacekeeping force to Ukraine. But as we recently reported on, my friends, and we went into it in detail, we know that Merz rather, Merz, the Chancellor Merz in Germany, has already declared that there is a war between Germany and Russia. And if you remember, in January of 2024, there was a leaked document from the German government that we went into at the time, that talked about how by July of 2025, there would be war between Russia and NATO. Now, it showed a map that went play by play on exactly what's happening. Now, of course, we're in September now. However, as I said at the time, we don't know if it's going to go, exactly to the detail on time, but they did map out how all this would happen, and it did mention Lithuania, and it did mention what we saw with the pushback from Slovakia, which of course we saw Robert Fico, the prime minister there, get shot, and then he claimed that it was very likely that this was done by agents of the European Union to force him into war with Russia, as he is of course, a NATO country on the border of Ukraine who refuses to allow people to pass through there because he does not want to support the war. And of course, we saw after that the Georgian president claimed that he was threatened, that they threatened to kill him and make a point out of him, like as they said themselves, Robert Fico, if he does not allow NATO forces through to the territory that, of course, we're seeing so much carnage over. Now, we could go back to Russia being propped up by the U.S. in the first place, in Ukraine, 2014 Maidan massacre, false flag, and everything that led to what we see today, and the comedian in chief Zelenskyy, who used to play piano with his penis on television. I mean, it's all one big joke. It's a big script. But the point is, we are seeing the normalization of the script continue to roll out for war between NATO and Ukraine, even with these peace deals, as we see what they call the willing meet in Paris to define security guarantees for Ukraine. That is Macron, that is Keir Starmer, and that is, of course, Zelenskyy. So, and of course, while they're reporting apparently to Ursula von der Leyen comments, which came recently, as of course there has been pushback from obviously Trump on this issue. From Berlin came sharp words to the address of Ursula von der Leyen, who is playing the commander-in-chief of a military force that does not exist, they say. Now, they're calling it the coalition of the willing. And with that, we see now 26 countries, as I mentioned, talking about ending any ceasefire agreement, basically, and going to war with Russia, sending long-range missiles into Russia. Ukraine deploys autonomous drone swarms in first real-world combat use. Artificial intelligence-driven drones operating in coordinated groups have been unleashed on the battlefield, signaling a major shift towards automated warfare. Now, this is concerning, but also something that you might have seen our videos recently where we talked about this. Palantir's Alex Karp laughing about profiting from killing Palestinians using AI in Palestine, using Israeli drones that are all AI driven and indiscriminately bombing people. He calls them Hamas, useful idiots, and mostly terrorists. An absolute joke, a horrible human being. Him and Peter Thiel, of course, we saw in the recent Epstein file document dump that, of course, we saw Epstein talking with Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel, talking with Epstein about meeting with Palantir's founder, Peter Thiel. There's a lot going on here. It all goes down to blackmail, but this is a scripted event. Same with the so-called ceasefire with Iran, which we've talked about before. The end goal, the 7-country plan, doesn't suddenly go away because Trump says something. Trump does not have control over all of this. He is just a person, a participant, a person behind the podium that, of course, they have to make it seem like he's doing a lot so people follow blindly. The reality is that we have a much more happening here. British Prime Minister hails European readiness to supply Ukraine with long-range missiles. The UK premier said Putin cannot be trusted and called for an escalation of pressure on Russia. So that's happening as they're using autonomous drones over there. And simultaneously, we see the same thing in Israel. And I'm going to talk about Israel for a second here, because I think it all correlates. All these things are very much connected. we have to remember that one of the ways that we see this correlation between the Russia-Ukraine situation, China, and of course then Israel and Palestine, is China and Russia's one of their top allies is Iran. Iran is the target of for example, Trump putting raising the military budget to $1 trillion, the largest in U.S. history, largely to annex Palestine and to target Iran, which Iran's government has recently said there is no actual ceasefire. This is all nonsense, similar to what we're seeing with the so-called ceasefire in Lebanon, where Israel says they're not defying the ceasefire agreement by shelling Lebanon every single day, including hitting a nursery school the other day. Now, it is all connected, and it is all part about the overall chaos that is being manufactured here. To order out of chaos is a major part of this, to shift the world into a system of technocracy and dependence on the new world government. Of course, a lot of people are talking about how even the peace deals themselves could be just what they need to cause this next world war. EndOfTheAmericanDream.com says why the peace conference on September 22nd could cause a catastrophic war to erupt in the Middle East. A very dangerous geopolitical chess match is playing out right in front of our eyes. As I discussed yesterday, France and Saudi Arabia will co-chair the conference on the two-state solution at the United Nations on September 22nd. The goal of this conference is to create an unstoppable wave of international momentum towards the creation of a Palestinian state. Israeli officials are very upset about this conference, and they are considering annexing large portions of the West Bank in response. If that happens, Israel's Islamic neighbors will go absolutely berserk, and a catastrophic war could break out in the Middle East. So let us hope that cooler heads prevail, because we are rapidly approaching a point of no return. When French President Emmanuel Macron announced that he would personally co-chair the conference on the two-state solution, he publicly acknowledged that we may see an annexation in response. French President Emmanuel Macron announced Tuesday that he will co-lead an international conference in New York on September 22nd with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to promote a two-state solution for Israel and Palestine. The conference will coincide with the UN General Assembly and marks a renewed push for diplomatic engagement despite the ongoing war in Gaza. In a tweet, Macron said, and I quote, "I just spoke with the Saudi Crown Prince, and together we will lead the two-state solution conference in New York on September 22nd. He emphasized that no annexation or forced displacement will stop the momentum we have built together with the Crown Prince, momentum that many of our partners have joined. Macron knows exactly how Israel may react to the peace conference on September 22nd, but he's going ahead with it anyway. So now it's Israel's move, they say." See, this is all correlating because the end goal is that 7-country plan. Then, of course, the shift from the west to the east. So then we have the Eastern Bloc, Russia and China. This was all part of the agenda all along. And the idea of, again, as I've gone into in my previous video, China was propped up as a monopoly for trade in the first place by the U.S. This was all part of the agenda, my friends. That major wave, and we have both going at the same time. Not to mention the push for war now with Central and South America, as well as with Mexico, where I live. Absolute horror show what they're doing here, and they're going to cause mass violence in Mexico by doing these things, and it's absolutely disgusting. And then hitting, Tren de Aragua from Venezuela, horrible game that does horrible stuff. Guaranteed CIA operation, guaranteed. But then now Trump is bombing them. The peace president gets nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize by Netanyahu, who has more blood on his hands than pretty much any world leader in recent history. And again, is doubling down on manufacturing war in the Middle East, placing proxies throughout all these governments like we saw in Syria, arming and funding terrorists, including Hamas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Mujahideen, placing Wahhabis all over the region to then use it as justification to continue to go in. All the while, we see the correlation with the Khazarians in Ukraine and the move by, of course, Trump to get a peace deal, but of course, he's still arming and funding Ukraine. Are people forgetting about that? He's still arming and funding Ukraine to this day, and Trump is now putting out comments saying that he's totally disappointed with Vladimir Putin as he meets with Xi Jinping on the World War II anniversary date, and is claiming in interviews now that that Vladimir Putin is betraying the U.S. and is conspiring against the U.S. with China. See, we go in this circle forever as we see all these European leaders still say that they want boots on the ground in Ukraine and to shoot long-range missiles into Russia, which is, I know it's been offset, but World War III, which is a gimmick at this point, the words World War III. But it's a real thing that affects real people in a real way that will be devastating beyond belief. And it's all manufactured, meant to keep us all on one side or the other of a paradigm, running in circles, always dependent, always controlled, and shifting us into the new world order, which will not be of militarism. This old world order that's been new since the 90s will collapse via militarism, and that will be the creation, the birth of the new world order, which of course will be technocracy and complete control of mankind through digital IDs, all that stuff. They're already talking about, giving out rations, food rations to military, U.S. military with, mRNA in it and stuff like that. We're talking about a real agenda that is playing out before our eyes, and everything else is just nuance. It's just staged. It's just, Trump saying we are going to work on this peace deal, and we are going to end war and bring peace to the earth while bombing all these countries and shifting into the new AI system and digital IDs. I'm sorry, but I'm not buying it, and no one can make me buy it because I've been watching this stuff for 19 years play out, and I know how these psyops work. The reality is we have two manufactured sides that are leading us to the same agenda. All roads lead to Rome, and you end up with food rations and digital IDs, social credit, and 15-minute cities. And, we have with CBDC, central bank digital currencies. Russia's one of the main countries rolling it out. Ukraine has been trying to roll it out. China and Taiwan, the United States and Canada. I mean, my goodness. They're doing all the biometrics now in Mexico too. There's no world leader on this planet that is innocent nor actually in charge of their country. It's all one big script on the global stage to push us into this technocratic system of enslavement. Once we understand that, then we can get prepared for it. And then once we get prepared for it, then they cannot control us because they depend on the dependence of the masses. They want to destroy what is the basis of humanity: independence, individualism, self-responsibility. So we need to be those things that they want to destroy: independent, self-responsible, free. And so with that, I close this off once again with some real world solutions. Heavensharvest.com, again, in the description. I urge people to get on this. If you don't have storable food in your house, then you are just dependent, waiting for the state to force feed you later on whatever they feel is necessary. If you go to heavensharvest.com, you can get freeze-dried food, non-GMO and organic kits of survival food, 25-year shelf life, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you will get 5% off as well as free shipping on these orders. So get on it now, my friends. Don't wait until it's too late. It's extraordinarily important going forward that you aren't dependent and you and your family are prepared. Excuse me. I also mentioned Wham Beef at the beginning of the video, www.whambeef.com. And you could get what's left of the freeze-dried chicken and freeze-dried beef for 50% off when you use code WHAMBEEF. Not Wham Beef, WHAM50, WAM50. Wham Beef was the old one that you won't get as much savings on. So WHAM50, you'll get 50% off. I've mentioned this before, avoiding what they are doing to us with frequency. I urge people to check out our link for Wave Watch 2.0. You could get $100 off when you use code WHAM, W-A-M. Amazing stuff, 1,100 plus frequencies. Great for sleep, emotion, mental clarity, energy, of course, immune function. I urge people to check that out. Also check out our link for vni.life/wham, W-A-M, where you can get super supplements like you've never seen anywhere before. Use code WHAM15, WAM15, and you will get 15% off, especially on things like Protovite, which is super cool. 100 plus vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. It helps cellular health, immune function, skin rejuvenation, full body system report, longevity, etc. It's just absolutely amazing what it can do. From before the toxins in the blood to 5 minutes after taking it, white blood cells 4 times bigger, red blood cells freely flowing, circulation is back. This is an amazing thing. It usually takes a month or so to do that to your blood. So super cool stuff going forward. We have many different ways that you can get prepared in the description below. Also, obviously, avoiding the CBDC system. Firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/ has to be that exact link. And there you could buy physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium. Hold it in your hands, put it in a vault, or put it in an IRA outside of the traditional IRA system. Schedule an appointment for a free consultation with Mark Gonzalez and a complimentary investors package. Just let him know in the comments of the forum that you found him at World Alternative Media, or WAM, W-A-M. We have many different videos with Mark Gonzalez, again, at our channel on Rumble and BitChute. I urge people to go check out. As we close this off, I want to thank everyone who has helped support us. We could not survive without you. So thank you to those who've donated to our GoGetFunding.com, Patreon, Subscribestar, and Crypto, etc. You guys are absolutely amazing. And without you, I don't know where we'd be right now. So again, just a shout out to everyone who's helped support us as we face 90% loss in revenue. You guys are keeping us up and running. Our Patreon and Subscribestar, if you pledge $4.99 a month or more, you'll get exclusive content, including early access. And of course, we can send you personalized video responses to questions you might have. We have an X account where you can also subscribe for the same amount and the same comment or content for $5 a month at World Alt Media. We have a PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com. We have a Bitcoin address that you can scan on the screen here or donate in the description if you please. And we have, of course, our Cointree linked with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in, if you please, including privacy coins, which we appreciate. We have a Teespring store with merchandise. And as always, my friends, you could, of course, find us on Telegram, band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon. We are on, of course, many different platforms, Hive, Steemit, Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson, and on the bad guys, TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms except for Spotify, where, of course, we are banned. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. And as always, my friends, live freely, live by example. That's what it's all about. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.